All right. Hey team, Coach Jake here. Welcome to today's training where we're going to be talking about losing that last 5 to 10 kilos. So this one's particularly important for people who are either eating really well, or what you consider to be well, or not a lot. Okay, you might not be eating a huge volume of food, and maybe you're wondering, why am I not losing this last bit of weight? You've probably lost a fair bit already, or at least some, and now you've stalled. Okay, so that's who I'm aiming this at. Okay, just so that you know. Now, the first thing we must go over before we go into what I'm talking about today, which is quite advanced, is the basics. Okay, so there's a good chance that you might actually be missing some of the basic fundamentals of fat loss. So we're going to quickly cover off on there, because there's many things it could be. For example, you might have some food intolerances or food sensitivities that you're not even aware of, causing stress in your body. You could have an undue amount of stress happening in your life, mentally or physically. Overtraining is an example of physically, although unlikely for most people. Maybe you're not sleeping very well. Maybe your gut health is not very good. Okay, so there's all of these environmental factors, all these things that are happening that we need to make sure we're actually doing them first before we jump to the conclusion that, oh, I'm doing everything perfectly, why aren't I losing weight? Almost always, or literally always, actually, there's not even an almost. Right? Whenever talking to anyone who says they're doing everything or they're eating well or whatever, I always find something that they could be doing different. Doesn't mean that you're not eating well. It means that you're not getting the result that you want. So we need to, come up with a different plan, or at least try something different. And it's quite nuanced. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's talk firstly about a thing called your BMR, which stands for basal metabolic rate. Okay, I'm going to get a little bit fancy today. Hope you're excited, and we're going to crack out our whiteboard. Okay, so basal metabolic rate. Now, all this means, and you might hear it BMR, different to BMI, which is something totally different. All that means, basal metabolic rate, is how much energy your body burns at rest. Okay, really, really simple. How much energy our body burns at rest. So we want our BMR to be to be as high as possible. We want to be burning as much energy as possible because energy, basically body fat, is stored energy, right? So we're trying to burn off this excess energy. So you want to think of your metabolism, your BMR, you want to be cranking that up to be a V8, okay? You do not want to be a Prius or a little 4-cylinder car. You want to be a V8, burning as much fuel as possible. This is why you see kind of the bigger, muscly, stronger people, they tend to eat a lot more because their metabolism's burning through energy at a really fast rate, okay? So that's really, really important. So that's kind of the starting point, because what generally happens, I'm going to draw you a little graph here, okay? So along here, we've got calories. Another word for calories, by the way, is just energy. All right, if you want to think of it that way. And over here we have time. So usually what happens, people start off on their fat loss journey. They're generally consuming a bunch of calories, not burning too many. Okay, so we're in a calorie surplus. We're consuming more than we are using, or we're in a balance, energy balance, meaning that our weight hasn't changed for quite a while. Okay, so basically we start improving our food, or we start eating less food, and our calories that are coming into our body is coming down. Okay, hope that kind of makes sense. Another way to think of it, let me get rid of this thing here, is your body has what we call set points. Okay, so your metabolic rate will have a set point. Usually when you start training, it's quite high because you're probably carrying a bit of weight. Carrying all that extra weight requires a bunch of energy, all right? So you start exercising and clean up your food, you lose some weight. So after a little while, your body's set point actually comes down, okay? So we are burning up some energy, we're losing some weight, we plateau, so we drop some more, all right? So plateau here, we drop some more energy, or we increase our energy expenditure, we start training more, and so on and so forth. Some people just go straight and they start eating very little and they drop straight down here really quickly. They lose a bunch of weight quickly. An example of this is if you get gastric surgery done, all right, you're not eating anywhere near as much food, your energy intake crashes, you lose a bunch of weight pretty quickly. What happens then though, which is very, very common, is we flatline. Okay, we find it very, very difficult to lose weight. The average person is doing that in slower motion, like these steps here, okay? But eventually, they also get to this point where we flatline, okay? So what's happened here is our calories now are very, very low, okay? We're eating clean. We think we should be in a calorie deficit. In other words, we think we should be losing weight, but we're not. Because the problem is we're actually now in energy balance, even though we were losing weight, consuming the same amount of energy, now we're not. That's because our metabolic rate has reduced, and we call this your metabolic set point, okay? So in other words, now your body's not using up as much energy. Your body is very smart. It has a lot of ancient wisdom over, hundreds of thousands of years that we've been evolving. And it knows, hey, if we keep losing weight at this rapid rate, then we're going to literally die. Okay, so we need to adjust things. We need to slow the motor down. We need to go from being a V8 up here, right, to being a Prius and really conserving our energy. All right, so everything slows down. You generally have less energy for doing stuff. Basically, your body's not using as much energy at rest. All right, I hope that kind of makes sense. Often what will also happen here is you've lost some muscle mass. Okay, and again, muscle requires energy to live. So more muscle is a good thing. Even half a kilo or a kilo of muscle will make a big difference. Okay, it means we burn more energy every second of the day. So with that in mind, if you're watching this video, it's very likely that your metabolic set point is now pretty low. Okay, it's down here. So what we actually need to do is start the process of building you back up into becoming a V8. Now, we do not go from Prius to V8 overnight. If you just start consuming a heap more energy, what is going to happen is you will gain body fat. We want to get our engine revved up without gaining body fat. So we have to do a thing that we call climbing the mountain. Okay, so you're here right now, you've been flatlined for a while, not losing weight. What we're going to do is increase your calorie intake by approximately in the ballpark of 200 calories a day. Okay, so it's a little jump. It's not a crazy huge jump. It's very manageable. For reference, if you know, like a YoPro, a cup of YoPro yogurt is about 100, just under 100 calories. So like 2 of those a day. Or a YoPro and some nuts, right? You can figure out what you like to eat. Or it could just be a little bit extra at each meal. And then we're going to allow our body time to adjust to this new set point. All the while we're measuring this, okay? We're jumping on the scanner every week because our goal here is to become a V8 without gaining body fat, okay? Sometimes you'll actually even become leaner through this process of eating more as well. But eventually I'll show you how to get the leanness happening later. And then after 2 weeks of getting adjusted to that new set point, we increase again, approximately 200, depending on the person. There are a few factors that would come into that, but we're adjusting it. So as long as you didn't gain body fat here, then you go up again. If you did gain body fat, you stay there until you stabilize or lose it again, okay? Then we go up 200, again, stabilize, approximately 2 weeks. Again, it could be shorter, could be longer, depending on the person. And we keep following this process until we're basically feeling like, hey, it's actually hard for me to keep eating more and more food, all right? And then you're at the top of the mountain, all right? You are at the very least the same body fat as you were down here, but now you're consuming a whole lot more energy. So your maintenance set point all right, to maintain your current body fat level is now much higher. All right. So our goal is always to be losing body fat whilst eating as much as possible. And this is exactly the reason why. So once you've maintained that set point for a little while, some people will even find they're still losing body fat here. But if that's the case, it's a good idea to go up again. All right. Because the higher you can get to that maintenance level, the better. It's about long-term thinking, as you can see. If you got here 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, this is going to take you a little while, at least 8 weeks of work here. And then what's going to happen, which, by the way, is why most people fail to do this because they're too impatient. Then we're going to start the opposite process. So now we're either going to reduce our calories or, so reduce calories or increase expenditure. So it's always beneficial, if possible, to increase your expenditure to get your deficit, because that way you can keep your set point really high. However, more and more exercise has its limits as well, especially when you got family, work, etc., etc. Okay, so when we drop here, we're going to find ourselves losing some body fat. All right, we want to keep that. Once we stop losing body fat, then we reduce again. Again, slow reductions, not big ones. Okay, 200 or so calories will usually do the trick. Okay, or just some extra exercise, like an extra workout, or 20 minutes of walking a day, things like that you can increase. By the way, you can also increase your exercise intensity is the other one, not always time. Okay, and we follow this process again, hopefully never getting, our goal is certainly not to get so low down here unless you're doing some kind of competition or something. So once you get to your happy place, you're good. If you don't get to your happy place yet, in other words, you've still got a few kilos to drop, you can then start this process again. Okay. Now, like I said earlier, this is a long-term approach. That's why most people fail. All right. It's easy to get the wins early on when you start exercising, you make a few changes, you improve really, really quickly. And then you stagnate, and then you need to take a longer term approach. It often takes longer to lose the last 5 or 10 than it did to lose the first 20 or so. All right, so just bear that in mind. So a quick little recap. All right, I hope this all kind of makes sense, and happy to answer questions later. Quick little recap, and then action plan time. So what our goal is to lose body fat whilst eating as much as possible. Okay, so lose body fat, eat lots. All right, excuse my handwriting. Number 2, we want to basically increase our set point. Okay, number 3, small increments, both up and down. 200 calories is a good kind of rough marker, but we can adjust that as we're testing and measuring. Ideally, you're scanning on the InBody scanner every week whilst you're going through this process. Number 4 is think long term. Like, get rid of these arbitrary made up timelines of, I want to lose it in 8 weeks, 6 weeks, 4 weeks, blah, 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 blah. Extend your time horizon. Does it really matter if you're already 30, 40, 50 years old? If it takes another 6, 12, 24 weeks, whatever, to achieve your goal, it really doesn't matter, okay? In the scheme of things, the person you become by having the patience and the diligence and the practice to go through this and actually get there makes it even more rewarding in the end, okay? And last but not least, more muscle, okay? So we kind of touched on this earlier, but one of the mistakes people make is they train cardio all the time. Cardio, cardio, cardio. That will get you so far. Okay, the last 5 kilos or so, and certainly the leaner you want to get in the end, the more muscle you're going to require. Muscle requires energy to live. It's one of the best ways to increase our metabolic set point is to build more muscle. So that might mean changing your training up, okay? Doing a little bit less of the HIIT work, a little bit more of the muscle building stuff, depending exactly where you're at in this cycle. Because some of you have, just struggling for that last 3 or 4 kilos, which I'd be saying, let's build some muscle. If you've still got 10 plus to lose, then you're probably erring more to the cardio, high intensity training side of things. Okay. And the last thing that I almost forgot to mention, which is a common one for us, because we work with a lot of beginners, right? People just getting back into exercise, and there's no real reference point for training intensity oftentimes, okay? So one of the things that often comes up is people say something like, oh, I'm already training X times a week, and they think to increase their energy expenditure, they need to do another session or add in this, add in that. Sometimes that's useful, but time is a challenge, okay? So the other way to increase your energy expenditure is to simply train harder in the same amount of time, okay? So for example, in a boxing session, if every punch is a little bit harder, over all the 1,000 odd punches you do in a workout, you end up burning a lot more energy. If you lift a little bit extra weight and cause a little bit more damage in those muscles, that's going to take more and more energy to recover from after the workout. Okay, just pushing that little extra 10% can really go a long way, guys. Okay, so the extra 10%, and 10% extra is not a big deal. 10% harder. It's hardly noticeable, but it will make a big difference. Now, last but not least, action plan. Okay, really, really simple. First of all, we want to figure out our set point. So there's two ways to do this. One is if you've been eating the same kind of foods, if you're a very consistent eater, you already know that's kind of my set point where I'm at. My weight's been stable for a fair while now. If you're a bit all over the shop, what you need to do is start tracking everything you eat and drink, by the way. So using an app kind of like MyFitnessPal or something like that would be great. And that way you can track it over a week or two and just figure out the average calories that you're consuming, okay? And obviously that gives us a set point. That's where we're starting from. Then we add 200 and try that. Really important to test and measure. You need to keep accurately tracking that food, so you're actually doing 200 extra. There's no point having that extra 200 in the morning and then having 200 less or 100 less or 150 less in the evening, okay? So you need to be fairly accurate there, otherwise it's not going to work, okay? Small increments is the key here, guys. So patience. Any questions, let me know. I hope that was helpful in some way, shape, or form. So let me know what was the most helpful thing, and let me know if you have any questions. Apart from that, I hope it was good. See you later, and until next time, have a good one. Bye.